Hello, Blue Jays fans, and welcome to Sunny Side of the Dome. I'm your host, Karen Soutar, and I'm here to talk to you today about some Blue Jays baseball. So, this show is brought to you courtesy of Jays from the Couch. And if you like what I do on Thursday evenings, there's lots more content for you to check out. There's from the Couch's main podcast, which is Sunday evenings at 7 p.m. As well on our YouTube channel, there's a relatively new show that there's been a few episodes of the On Feck Circle starring the host, Steve Feck. If you haven't seen this show, I really do highly recommend it. Steve, it's funny. He and I, when it comes to the Blue Jays, we disagree on almost everything you could say. But Steve, I have to really respect who he is and what he does. He's smart. He's funny. He's entertaining. And one thing I can almost promise you is that Steve will make you think about things in a way that might not have occurred to you in the past. I always think that's a good thing, even if you don't end up agreeing with the person, just to kind of have your horizons expanded mentally. So, Tuesday evenings, 7 p.m. If you haven't seen the On Fact Circle, highly recommend. Okay, now let's get into our lineup for today. So first off, before I start talking Blue Jays baseball, I really want to take a little bit of time and express my gratitude. I want to express my gratitude to everybody at Jays from the Couch, all of the writers behind the scenes. We have our chats, and everybody is pretty well supportive of each other and shares different ideas, which is great. And in particular, well, once again, the aforementioned Steve Feck. Steve, I couldn't ask for a better teammate than you. That just the way that you go above and beyond the call of duty, and that goes for everybody. Whether somebody's written an article, he really goes out of his way to share it, to promote it on his own social media, and he's gone really above and beyond promoting my show for me, and he's really so kind, so supportive, and complimentary. So, Steve, thanks again for all that you do. Okay. Now, let's talk about some Blue Jays baseball. So, here we are into the off season, first week of February, and early on in the off season, one thing that General Manager Ross Atkins commented on was that he wanted to focus on run prevention, and I think that was a very good thing. The Blue Jays in 2020, I would characterize as good, but not great. I mean, they won. They were 32-28 on the 60-game season, and that had they played 162 games, that same winning percentage would have translated to 86-76. And a lot of people say, well, we don't know that they would have had the same winning percentage in 162 games, and that's absolutely true. We also don't know that they wouldn't have. I don't think you can really assume one way or another, but this is the season that they had, and they were a playoff team. They were good, and when not great, but good. When they were good, when they were winning games, they were winning because they were scoring runs. They were seventh in all of Major League Baseball last year in runs scored. Where they didn't do so well is in their pitching and their defense. So the defense, for the most part, I'll leave that for another time. The pitching, as far as the earned run average, they were 17th out of 30 teams in Major League Baseball. So below average, and that's if they want to continue moving forward, which I think they should, and I think they do, that they need to focus on upgrading the pitching. So, how have they done with that so far? Well, they've added, they re-signed pitcher Robbie Ray. He was a free agent. They didn't have to bring him back, nor did he have to come back. So he's back for 1 year. The majority, actually, of the deals that they've made have been 1 year. Even Steven Matz, who was the only trade that they made so far, he's eligible for free agency in 1 year. So, other than George Springer, which is the long-term contract, everybody could walk in a year, and that could be good, and that could be not so good. If they don't have great seasons, then at least the Jays aren't stuck with them beyond the 1 year. But we'll see. So Robbie Ray, and then more recently than that, after a long period of inactivity on the part of the Blue Jays and the front office, they signed Tyler Chadwick, Kirby Yates, and then more recently they traded for Steven Matz from the Mets in exchange for three prospects: Sean Reed-Foley, the best known, as well as Yennsy Diaz and sorry, I can't remember. Oh, Josh Winkowski, I believe. So, yeah, best of luck to the three of them. So, yeah, who have we got and how do they look? Robbie Ray, left-handed pitcher, 28 years old. He is, the thing with Robbie Ray is he's got a very good arm. He had an excellent season in 2017. Well, that was a few years ago. And I believe for the last 5 years in a row, he has had double digits in strikeouts per 9 innings pitched. So you know, if he's doing that well against major league hitters, that there is significant talent there. That the problem with Robbie Ray is that he's always way too high in walks. When they traded for him at the trade deadline last season, he was actually leading all of Major League Baseball in walks per 9 innings pitched, and I don't mean that in the good way, leading as in the most walks having given up per 9 innings. And I heard about that, and I looked at his stats, and I thought, what the heck are you doing? But I mean, the man does have some talent, and to his credit, whether it's him, whether it's pitching coach Pete Walker, he did do significantly better when he came to the Jays. The ERA went down a lot. The walks per 9 innings went down, and depending game to game, he had some success. He had some good games. I mean, the one playoff game that he played in, game one against Tampa Bay, he came in, and I think he gave up what probably should have been a double, and it was misplayed into a triple. And then what was it? A ground out that scored the run, and then after that he was just cruising. He got everybody else out. Of course, by then the Jays offense couldn't do much against the Rays. But I mean, Robbie Ray can be dominant if he can find the secret to unlock his success. If he has it in him to get a better command of the strike zone. So, excuse me. So there's that potential. Tyler Chadwick, another interesting arm. 30 years old, I believe, 9-year veteran. Again, his stats kind of nothing overly jumped out at me that much. He's been used primarily as a starter, a little bit out of the bullpen. One thing in trying to do my best deep dive into his numbers was that last year his ERA was over 5. His FIP, the fielding, the attempt that they make at fielding in independence ERA, so to speak, was about 2 runs a game lower than that. It was like 3 and change. So that suggests to me that when he didn't do so well last year, it was more the fault of some shaky fielding around him. So that's a possibility. Again, now for him to do well, hopefully the Blue Jays defense will be better significantly than it was in 2020. But again, that's a whole other discussion. So. Kirby Yates, he is the one pitching acquisition that they've made so far that I'm actually pretty excited about. Kirby Yates is a relief pitcher. in 2018 and 2019, he was an excellent relief pitcher. One of the best. In fact, some people think the best in all of baseball. He had, I believe, 41 saves in 2019 and an ERA just over one. Unfortunately, in 2020, he didn't have a very good season. However, it was discovered that he actually had some bone chips in his elbow, and so with that going on, his season needed to end. He had surgery to remove them, and as far as we know, that's all cleaned up. And he says he feels great. And presumably, when anybody gets signed, you always hear that there's medicals first. So presumably, if they're doing their job and things at least structurally aren't okay in there, that they would have detected that and not signed him. I'm assuming, hoping. But yeah, if Kirby Yates can bounce back and be anything at all like the pitcher that he was in 2018 and 2019, then that's huge for the Blue Jays because that's the dominant stopper that they need, and that they had for a while with Ken Giles. Unfortunately, Ken Giles he had his own health issues, as we all know. In 2020, he didn't do well. His season had to end, and he had Tommy John surgery. So he's a free agent, and even if the Jays had re-signed him or extended his contract, he's not going to pitch in 2021 because he's recovering from Tommy John, and so best of luck to him somewhere in 2022. Who knows? Maybe the Jays can do what the Dodgers did with, who was it, Tommy Canley, and sign him to a 2-year deal. So somebody else who also had Tommy John surgery, knowing that really what you're signing him for is the 2022 season. So that's something. If the Blue Jays were to do that with Ken Giles, I think it would be a good move. But in any case, yeah, Kirby Yates, I think they could have their dominant stopper. And some people out there might be thinking, well, why don't they just give the job to Jordan Romano? I like Jordan Romano. I like I've seen from him so far as a pitcher, and I think he really could be that Blue Jays closer going forward. Let's not forget, so we have seen Romano in Major League Baseball for the past 2 seasons, so 2019 and 2020. He's had some injury issues both seasons. I'm not saying that's going to continue. Sure as heck hope it doesn't. I mean, for everyone's sake, for his sake, the team, but you never know. So that and the fact that he is still young in terms of his MLB experience, he's not quite proven yet. So I think having a Kirby Yates around can only benefit Romano. And I mean, knock on wood, even if Yates really isn't that good anymore, just having his presence on the team, in the clubhouse, a veteran who has been there before, and he can, hopefully take Romano under his wing and help mentor him in that way. So I think it's a good get. And yeah, so then Steven Matz, left-handed pitcher, six-year MLB veteran, I believe, has spent all of his time with the Mets up until now. They traded him away, and on their end, from what I hear, it may have been a bit of a salary dump, clear a little bit of room. So whatever they want to do there. Steven Matz was excellent, but to look at those good seasons, you have to go, unfortunately, all the way back to 2015 and 2016. If we were getting that Steven Matz, I'd probably be doing cartwheels in my living room right now. Then again, if he was still that pitcher, chances are the Mets would not be trying to trade him away or did trade him away. So that was 2015, 2016. And then 2017 through 19, he really wasn't as good. He wasn't so consistent, although in the second half of 2019, maybe it looked like he might have kind of figured something out there. He had an ERA just over 3.5, I believe, in the second half of 2019. So it was looking a little bit more promising there. And then 2020 happened. And I'm sorry to say it, but he really didn't have a good season at all. His ERA was over 9. And I just, I don't know how to sugarcoat that. I don't really know what to say other than, he, he has talent or has been good in the past. I mean, a lot of these guys, and for me, I kind of throw Tanner Roark into that mix as well, because even though they didn't just acquire him, they signed him for 2 years a year ago. He's someone that prior to 2020, his numbers were decent. That they weren't outstanding, but they weren't terrible either. And I thought, okay, back into the rotation guy. And last season, the Jays, it was really only the second official year of the rebuild. They weren't really expecting to be contenders. And then two things happened. The Jays as a team were better than most people expected, whereas Roark, looking back at the rest of his career prior to 2020, he was a lot worse than what was expected. So assuming that he doesn't get traded and he actually is with the Jays for 2021, I mean, you've kind of got some projects there. So Robbie Ray, Tanner Roark, Tyler Chatwood, Steven Matz. I mean, what are you what are you going to do with these guys? Question: would you prefer to see young arms start at AAA Buffalo to build up endurance and confidence, or do you feel they could flourish in piggyback roles? Okay, good question. Yeah, I was gonna get, well, to a point. I was gonna get to that because as things stand right now, with all of these major league veterans that the Jays have, you could have a rotation at AAA of 5 guys who are all MLB ready, have all pitched in MLB, and with varying degrees of success, between Anthony Kay, TJ Zoik, Julian Merriweather, Thomas Hatch, and Trent Thornton. I mean, that could be your rotation at Buffalo, and we've all seen them pitch for the Jays, and at least to some extent pitch pretty well. So to answer that specific question, I I look at those guys as starting pitchers, and I think if they're not going to start in MLB, I think they should be starting at AAA just to keep them in that routine, in a rotation. And when not so much a question of if, and this isn't a knock on the Blue Jays staff specifically, but I mean, there's always you look at any team in Major League Baseball, and you don't finish the season, excuse me, with the same pitching staff that you start with. So that there's always something, whether it's injuries, whether someone performs so badly that they need to be replaced, whether they get sent to the bullpen or who knows what. Like there's opportunities to call somebody up from AAA. And so, yeah, I think those guys need to be there, and they need to dominate, and they need to show that they're ready, and the opportunities will come. So, thanks for the question. So yeah, there's these projects, and then you've got these other younger guys that are MLB ready, but as it stands right now, the opportunity for them is probably down the road. It's probably not with the Jays as of opening day. It'll probably be, as I said, during the season, knock on wood, as somebody get injured, because inevitably somebody's going to get injured. It's just, it always does happen. So yeah, I mean, behind your ace, which is Ryu, and then Nate Pearson, high ceiling prospects, and hopefully this will be the year that we get to see him dominate major league hitters. But yeah, then you've got all these projects, and I guess for me, what I would really be happy to see, and hopefully it's still coming, is to acquire somebody who not only has the MLB experience but has had success. Somebody that, after review, that you can be pretty confident that when you hand the ball, this guy the ball at the beginning of the game, that's you've got a pretty good chance to win. So on that note, I mean, what are they doing? And Ross Atkins has said that they're not necessarily done, and they're still working on some things. And who the heck knows? I mean, there could be free agent signings. There could still be a trade if they can get the right guy, and it doesn't literally cost them the farm. So see how that goes. I'm always interested in what other people think. And a couple of days ago on my Twitter feed, I ran a poll. I like to run polls on Twitter, and what I asked was, so there's still some good free agent pitching out there. I'm not even going to talk about Trevor Bauer. For me, that's a whole other story. So for me, he's not even in the conversation. But taking him out of the picture, probably the consensus, the best free agent pitchers that are still out there, not in any particular order, but James Paxton, Jake Odorizzi, and Taijuan Walker, who pitched briefly for the Blue Jays when they traded for him at yesterday. It feels like yesterday, doesn't it? At last year's trade deadline. So the poll that I sent out there, I said, imagine that the Blue Jays could sign two of these guys. That two might be a little bit optimistic. I like to shoot for the stars, but that was my poll. So I said that if they can sign two of these guys, which combination would you prefer? And the 128 people voted, and the most popular choice, which also happens to be my choice, was James Paxton and Taijuan Walker. But 41% of the people who voted chose them. And it was fairly close because the next most popular option was Jake Odorizzi and Taijuan Walker with 40%. And the other 19 chose Odorizzi and Paxton. I don't know, there's something when I look at Odorizzi and the career that he's had, and especially recently, something about that just makes me a little bit nervous. I can't tell the future more than anybody can, but I don't know. I don't have a great feeling that he is going to be really good. James Paxton, he didn't have a good season in 2020, but again, he was, when he did come back and pitch, he was coming back from significant injury. So yes, there is that risk. Nobody knows for certain at this point whether he can bounce back and be the pre-injury James Paxton. If he can, though, he had a darn good career before 2020. If you look at him year after year after year, he was good. He was consistent. And that's what the Jays need. They need somebody else that they can rely on when you give him the ball every fifth day or whatever it ends up being. So him, I'd be willing to take a chance on. Taijuan Walker, a lot of Blue Jays fans really like him, and I'm definitely one of those. I really think that he was great as a Blue Jay. I mean, his ERA was 137, I believe. It was just way down there. He just seemed to do really well with the Jays, and some of the other Jays from the couch writers who are much more into the analytics say, oh, but the analytics, we really have him as nothing more than a back end of the rotation starter. Well, to me, I don't put everything on analytics. Analytics are a useful tool. That they, for me, are not the beginning and the end of evaluating players. I think there's a lot more to it. I think you have to rely on your guts and the eyeball test. And even if somebody's pitches or their physical tools or whatever don't necessarily top the stats say that 5 times fast. Stats cast lists. that I think that they can find other ways to be successful. I would love to have a longer look at Taiwan Walker in a Blue Jays uniform. So I'm hoping that it happens. Ah, well, that's the states of the pitching. Steve, which current Blue Jays potential starter concerns you the most? Well, let's see. Are we talking about the quote unquote reclamation projects that I mentioned, or are we talking about the young guys at AAA? I'm assuming that you are talking about the ones that are likely to be on the major league team. And Steve, I'm sorry. I know you're a big fan of Tanner Roark. I watched him last year, and I didn't see too much to be hopeful for, unfortunately. I mean, for his sake and the sake of whatever team he pitches for, whether the Jays retain his services or whether they trade him, I really hope that 2020 was an anomaly and that he can really bounce back and at least be the pitcher that he was before 2020. I don't feel like I'm being realistic if I say that I believe that. So yeah, sorry, your guy Tanner Roark, he scares me a lot. Ah, well, that almost brings us to the end of today's episode. But before I sign off for today, through Blue Jay colored glasses. So today's take that is definitely pro Blue Jays that possibly pushes the needle from realism into optimism. But here's how I see it. So Blue Jays were a playoff team in 2020. As we all know, there were expanded playoffs, so 8 teams per league made the playoffs. They've talked about expanded playoffs again for 2021. I believe the proposal was 7 teams per league. As of now, it's been turned down. I think they're still going to get it done. If you remember that they originally turned down expanded playoffs last year, and only at the 11th hour did they actually get it done when the owners approached the players union again and said, we're still very interested. Can we work on this? And literally the day of the first game, just a bit before first pitch, they announced that it was done. So that's great. I still think there's going to be expanded playoffs in 2021. However, even if not, I have faith. Our Blue Jays are going back to the playoffs in 2021, even if there's only 5 playoff teams per league, as there have been for the past several years. I also think they're going to have a better playoffs that they did in 2020 because let's face it, getting to the playoffs was great. The 2 playoff games that they played in 2020, not so much. So they're going to continue moving forward in 2021. They'll have a better playoffs that they did in 2020. Now, let's face it, a better playoffs could mean winning 1 game. I'm not going to sit here just yet when I don't know who will be on the team come opening day and tell you how much better. For that, I need a crystal ball. But yeah, I'm confident in our team. I think there's a lot to like. They're going to continue moving forward starting in 2021. And that's my take through Blue Jay colored glasses. With that, I think we're pretty much out of time this week. Thank you again for joining me, and take care. Go Blue Jays.